Hi, my name is Brian Almeter, and I'm an associate at Booz Allen Hamilton. And today, my speech is going to be about branding SharePoint 2013 with Design Manager and device channels. And this is for the SharePoint 24 conference online worldwide, April 16th, 2014. A little bit more about myself and what the site I'll be going over. Again, my name is Brian Almeter. I'm associate at Booz Allen Hamilton, and I have been working on and off with SharePoint since version 2003, specializing in branding of SharePoint using jQuery and CSS to customize SharePoint for various U.S. government clients and internally within Booz Allen Hamilton. The site I'll be going over is 100years.ba.com. At Booz Allen Hamilton, we're celebrating our 100th year. And this is an internal site for employees to learn more about our history and volunteerism within our local communities. What we're going to be going over today is listed here. Basically, we had a proposal plan to use SharePoint Designer and how we were going to do it with an HTML design, how we're going to incorporate it into SharePoint 2013, how we're going to use Device Manager to create the master pages and page layouts, using what's called snippets to add content into our pages, using device channels for mobile and tablet devices, and how we're going to publish our design into SharePoint and add apps. Our marketing department came to our internal IS team and decided to use SharePoint 2013 as a platform for the 100years.ba.com. So we came up with a proposed implementation plan for using SharePoint Designer, and our marketing department used an external design firm to come up with a particular design that they wanted to use. So our proposal was to create the HTML and CSS and JavaScript files of the design, and then use SharePoint Design Manager to convert that HTML into a master page. With that, we could create page layouts to bring in different web parts or content for the pages, or use SharePoint 2013 snippets to add references to SharePoint, specific web parts, controls, etc. Now, during our research, what we found is that on incorporating an external design, only one HTML file will be converted into a master page. So if you have different types of layouts, you want to try and concentrate on just getting one file that will be your master page, and then you can create page layouts later. The HTML file must be XML compliant, so there's a couple things here that would be best for importing it into SharePoint. There's a couple things with the CSS that we also need to consider, and a couple things here that you might want to watch out for as far as with the body tags and the div tags, that SharePoint is going to add a lot of this stuff that we typically see with SharePoint as far as, let's say, the S4-body container. They'll be added in by SharePoint into the HTML. You might want to watch out for some of the images tags that you're going to be using, and also the list tags. Many designers like to use apply styles to those, but SharePoint often puts in their own styles for those type of elements. So we worked with our internal marketing team, will be referred here to call Marcom, to implement the design for Booz Allen's use of SharePoint 2013. And we use an external design firm, and they created this nice layout here, and this is a prototype, and you can see a couple things that are listed here we're actually going to be using Yammer and incorporating that, but they didn't have access to our Yammer account to be able to put it into the design. So most of the files here were consisted of HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and some graphical images. So we got the actual HTML and the CSS files, and we went through them, and there's a couple things that we needed to do here. What we did first was we created a duplicate version of the index page that they had, named it something ourselves, and we might want to avoid using that type of names for our files like index or default, because that's something typical that that SharePoint might use. And what we found in this process is that SharePoint does not like to use the IE conditional statements within HTML. So we need to really take that out and use the following for the HTML tag. We need to change some of the links and the style and the image references to be relative or local reference, because what we're going to do is take this whole design package and really put it into SharePoint, and the SharePoint will make all the references for us. So within the design, we had some code where the mock-up was, and so we took out kind of these three elements: the main menu, the Yammer, and the slideshow, because we're going to create those on our own. Now, one of the features of using SharePoint 2013 in the Design Manager is that you could create your HTML look and design outside of something other than SharePoint. You can use Dreamweaver, you can use Notepad, whatever you want to use. You can design your elements within this and then import or associate it with SharePoint. And one of the things that you can do is you can use the device manager to basically map a network drive to your actual local drive. So if you're making edits within, let's say, Dreamweaver, it'll automatically be affected or pushed into SharePoint. And what you're doing is you're actually editing the HTML page that is going to be referenced by the actual master page that you're going to be using. But one to quickly show you is kind of our design and what it would look like in Dreamweaver. So here's some of our graphical elements, some of our text, code, some other things that are in here. It doesn't look too pretty, but we can also see some of the things that we changed within the code. So within the actual first implementation, here's the index page that the design firm gave us, and they have some of these conditional statements, menu items, the Yammer feed that's listed here. It doesn't look too pretty, but some of the things that they incorporated. A lot of this code is for an image gallery that we decided to use something else for it. And if we go back here, we can see in our new page that we're going to be incorporating into SharePoint 2013. We changed the HTML type to a HTML5 tag type, changed some of our references, took out the menu, etc. Made it a little more simple for us to put in to SharePoint. So now we'll come into SharePoint 2013, and at Booz Allen Hamilton we're actually using Office 365. So within Design Manager, you can access it by going under the Gear menu here and finding Design Manager if you're a site owner or site collection admin. And then to the left we have a different menu structure here, and we're going to loosely follow this. It doesn't really lend well to go these steps 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So the first thing that we're going to do is go to step 3, uploading our design files. Now we have our design, we We manipulated some of the files to make it better on import, and the objective is basically to get the design files and put them into a master page gallery. There's different ways to do this. The way that Microsoft recommends is using this mapped network drive. And as I explained earlier, that benefit is you could work within Dreamweaver on your local system, and it's connected to SharePoint, and your design changes automatically can be pushed into your site. Had some troubles getting this to really work at first. Eventually did. But there's other ways you can do it. You can upload through the user interface, use SharePoint Designer, or use the good old-fashioned way of Content Manager that does just fine. Okay, now I wanted to show you how this could be, what this will really look like within SharePoint when we bring in that HTML design. So if I click on the Convert an HTML file to SharePoint master page, I can click on here, and what I can do is search for a page. Now what you could do is set up different folders that you want to use in order to put your design file in, but what I did was I uploaded a draft here, and I'm going to select that, and then SharePoint will do its magic, and it'll bring in that design file, and it says that the conversion was successful. And if I can click to preview it, it's going to show me some of the content that's been brought in, and it'll also provide this little div here. And what you could do is you can swap this out in the code and put your content in that area. So right now a lot of my content is outside of that, and some of my graphical elements and CSS are not really linked properly with this design file. So what we could do is we can go into SharePoint Designer and go into the Master Pages gallery. And we see here that we have an HTML file and a master page file. Now what you want to make sure to do in this instance with using Device Manager is to only make edits to the HTML file, because what will happen will any changes made here will automatically update within the master page. So HTML yes, master page no. So what we could do here is if we want to move this to a particular folder, what we could do is just drag it, and we're going to drop it into here because that's where I have all my design elements. And what will happen is that that master page will automatically be brought into where it's supposed to be. So here we have that as well. So if we go back in here, let's just make sure we're refreshed. If we click on this again, we'll still see some of these things here, but we can work out some of those details later. But what we want to focus on here is going in here and looking at our HTML file. Now what you'll notice here is that SharePoint brings in some of its own tags, and we have some SharePoint tags, some custom code tags, and you'll notice that when you do have something like, let's say here, this is MS, basically meaning Microsoft Start, and ME, Microsoft End. So you'll see a lot of these particular tags, and you could you want to leave most of these in here because those are SharePoint references. Now within our SharePoint, what happened on the conversion is that it placed in some of these HTML tags that SharePoint needs to show within SharePoint, such as the workspace and the body container. And then here's some of our custom HTML that we have in from our design. Now, if we looked before, we had that yellow banner. what SharePoint does is it creates a spot for your content to be placed into, and this is into the content placeholder main. Then this is a typical reference point for SharePoint and for ASP.NET, where you can put in some code. So we have some code here, and this is the yellow code that we had on the page. And what we could do is we can take that out and then put some of our content right into the page. So let's find our custom code here. I think we want to take all of this. And we could drop it right into here, into this code block. Take out that code block. And when we resave it, what we could do is we can always go back to this preview page, and it'll show our content. Now we can see that yellow bar is not there anymore. So as you can see, with using Design Manager, we can put that HTML design into SharePoint. It'll create our master pages, and then we can go back and forth and make any changes in something like Dreamweaver or Notepad, and then go back into SharePoint and see through our preview pane what our site is looking like. So an overview of some of the edits to the master page. When we open that HTML master, we can see some of the SharePoint tags that have been put in, and we can place our custom content into the content placeholder. This is some of the changes that we made. We put in this, and then here's kind of our what we want our new content to look like, and it has some of these Microsoft tags that we were talking about. So if we have any warnings and errors, we'll be able to see that, and if we publish the master page, it'll be available on our site. Now, once we've incorporated our master page into, our HTML master page into SharePoint, and we have it working correctly how we want it to be, and we've adjusted our content, this could be fine if we wanted to create pages based off of this, or we might only have one page. We can use this and be done with it. But usually with SharePoint and with other websites, you have let's say a home page layout, maybe a subpage layout, or an article page layout, a blog entry, something like that, that will require you to create different types of page layouts. So what you could do is you can create these different page layouts in SharePoint 2013 in the Design Manager. It gives us a preview similar to the master page, and it'll line it up with the master page that we have. What we could do is we could move some of our content or structure that we have that we've imported from our master page and put it into this page layout. So why don't we walk through a little bit with SharePoint Designer. So we go back into Design Manager, and we go now down to step 6. So from this, what we could do is we could basically create a page layout right here within Design Manager. We can select a different master page if we're looking to use that. We can make it a particular type of content. We're just going to leave an article page for now. And we can use the master page that we put in, or any type of these master pages. Now we can see we have our new page layout here right in, and if we click on it, we get that preview. So based on our content type that we selected, which was the article page, Microsoft will automatically put in some of the default content that we see and the page fields that are brought in for that particular content type by SharePoint. So this is kind of typical SharePoint type of things. Here's page image, page content, a list, etc., etc. So now what we could do is we could go back into SharePoint Designer and go into the page layouts. And this is going to bring us to some of our page layouts that we have. Okay, so this brought in our new HTML design, and what it does is that it creates an HTML master page, or I'm sorry, an ASPX page for us that's associated with that design. Now again, the same thing applies here. If we want to make edits, we make the edits in the HTML, not in the ASPX, because that's going to screw up some of our synchronization with Design Manager. So, and then if we wanted to move it to a particular place, Microsoft will will put it into the kind of the root level here. What we could do is we can just drag the HTML file where we want it to go, and then SharePoint is going to automatically bring the ASPX page with it. So if we go in to edit this file, we're going to see that it's associating with our master page, and it's going to have some of the same content that we had before. Here is the some of the default article content type that we brought in, we saw on that preview page. So if we wanted to replace this content with our custom design content, what we could do is go into our master page that we imported, and we had all that structure and content, and we can take it out of where we had this content placeholder. I'm going to grab this. I got all of it and delete it out of there, so we don't really need that, but we still want to leave in these tags is because associating with the master page, the stuff from the page layout is going to fit into this content placeholder where we have these tags, these ASP tags that we have. All of the content from the page layout is going to go into this area, so we can reuse the master page for our whole site, and in this case, as we saw earlier, it was like the header and the footer, and then all our page content or new page layouts can be adapted into that master page, just so we're not creating multiple things. So what I did is I took out that code, and I'm going to go back into my page layout, and right here where we have the main placeholder, I'm going to take all this kind of default content out, and bam, put in my new content for my design. And when I go to preview the page here, uh-oh, I got some problem going on. See if we can head back here and see, here we go. Here's the warning and error. So this is going to tell me if there's some particular problem. Okay. So it wasn't that big of a problem. It was just that the synchronization between the page layout and the master page was a little screwed up. So we can click here to kind of update the sections, and we're good to go. So some of the content here that we had on our master page earlier is now in our page layout. So now we can create different types of page layouts if we want to, or we can modify this page layout. So in this process, we added that HTML. We might want to make some fixes into our styles and designs, and we had to do that in our original one. Now, with SharePoint, we have this new thing, or SharePoint 2013, we have a new thing called snippets. And you can think of snippets like if you're creating your HTML website and you want to add a YouTube feed or a video, you grab the code from that particular vendor and you can put it into your code. And this is the same way that Microsoft has come up with these snippets. You can add different SharePoint, ASP.NET components and widgets that you can plug into your HTML master pages or page layouts to render some of the content that we're familiar with within SharePoint. So if we go into SharePoint here, what we see is at the top here, and this is in the page previews for both the master page and the page layouts, there's something at the top here called snippets. Now the snippets for both the master page and the page layouts are going to change a little bit. They're a little bit different, so you might want to investigate going between those two different ones to see what's available. Here I'm in the page layouts and I can have different type of content fields. So this is based on our content type that we selected earlier, article page. And these are some of the default page type fields that we have with the article pages. We can add different things here like security trim controls, web part zones where we can add in our custom apps and web parts that we want on our pages, different types of media, dynamic content. We can even do some custom ASP.NET code. So if we're really fancy and we have some stuff that we've created before, or we want to manipulate our pages somehow with ASP.NET, you can do it here. And what happens here is that we are going to have a preview of what this content or snippet is. And our HTML snippet code is down here. It's all listed here. We can copy to our clipboard. And on the right side here is different types of customization that you can do. You can change some of these values, different fields that you want to do. And when you do that, you can update, push the update button. And what this does is it modifies the content that's in the HTML snippet. So then you're all ready to cut and paste here and put into your page layout. So if I wanted to take this snippet that I created here, I can just go ahead and copy and paste, and we'll just click copy to clipboard. And I would go back into either my SharePoint Designer, or you could go into Dreamweaver or some other editing tool if you have it mapped. But in SharePoint Designer, what you could do is come into here, and we're going to change some of this content around. So we've selected an HTML snippet for our page image. So I'm going to go in, I'm going to go in all the way at the bottom here. And I'm just going to copy and paste that code. SharePoint puts in some HTML5 aspects with the data name field so that we can determine what exactly that is, or if it's needed in the future. And if we save that, it'll ask us to update here. And we go back to SharePoint to our preview page, and if we refresh that, we're going to see our new page image listed here. So we've incorporated all these things in SharePoint Designer and just refreshed, and it's automatically put into our page for us. So with the use of snippets, we were able to add in different things. We could add in our site logo in particular places, and that was one thing we did with our 100 Years site. We can add in different web parts. We can create web part zones, just like we do typically within SharePoint, where we can put in different web parts. We can add different security zones, and what we use these for is that we wanted particular people within our organization to see some of the sweep bar or the ribbon, and others not to. So we use the security trim controls to be able to determine how we were going to be able to show that information. All right, so what I want to do is show you a little bit more in depth as far as some of the stuff that we did with this in our layout that we end up using for our actual site. So here we can see some of our content, and with things that we wanted to add into the Centennial site is that we wanted a video, and we created a web part zone where we could drop in our own video because we were using something different than what's provided. We also wanted a Yammer feed, so we put in our Yammer feed code here and dropped it into a web part zone because we made that an app. So there's different things that we were able to do here, and different zones that we were able to create. If we go back into SharePoint, and let me get you to the page here, we can see some of the different aspects of it. Okay, so within our actual design, we added the web part zones here, different content editors, where we can add different things that we wanted to add. We have particular items here, and some of this is basically text and code that was on the actual page layout. So none of this is dynamic, this is more static. But if we wanted to add particular items or more items into here, we can always do that through adding a particular web part. So we can go into here just like we would in a typical SharePoint site and add different web parts that we want to onto the page. Another concept that Microsoft has introduced to SharePoint 2013 is the use of device channels. And what a device channel is meant to target particular devices. So what we could do is use different user agent strings to have multiple experiences for different devices or different experiences for devices. So if we wanted to have a particular view or a look for an iPhone, we could target the iPhone. If we wanted it for a Windows phone, we could do that. If we wanted it for a particular operating system, we could do that. We can use these user agent strings and target for each of the device channels. The device channels can also be attached to different master pages. So we have different options here with the device channels. And here's a snippet from a Microsoft site, basically kind of showing that how it would work. So we'd have one device channel for a desktop version, maybe another master page in CSS associated with a phone master page. So if we go into SharePoint, we can actually see how we can set this up, we can determine what device channels are going to be looking for what type of devices. Now what we did is that we created a mobile and a tablet version. The mobile is going to target the iPhone, the Android, the Windows Phone, tablet, iPad, Kindle, etc. So if we go back into Design Manager and we go to Manage Device Channels, which is step 2, we can also access this through the Site Settings. Device Channels. We can take a look at the different device channels we have set up. Here we can edit these, we can create new device channels, and I think it depends on what version of SharePoint 2013 you have. Depends on how many device channels you can have. So here with our mobile device, we'll show, try and select this to edit it. Just get real quick. There we go. So what we see here is we can name things, we can set aliases, we can have a description, we can make it particular to these type of device inclusion rules, and these are where the user strings go. So these are some of the different user strings that we're using for mobile devices. And then the default channel is always the default one that you want to use, and you can specify that. So what it does is it really targets these devices. And what you could also do is within your SharePoint or the HTML that you're creating for SharePoint, you can put in these device channel panels which actually target different devices. So you could have one big page layout that's maybe for your desktop version, but maybe have only something specific that would be targeted for a phone. So let's say you could have a layout of a web part for the desktop and then a different layout for the phone. You can incorporate it on the different page, but then with the channel panels you can target for those devices. So one would show for the desktop as opposed to one showing for the phone. So we used the device channel panel concept, and we took out some of the div tags and put it into the head tag to determine how we wanted to do some of our code. And this was a little bit different than how Microsoft presented it. You can take out these div tags because really we're just working with standard either SharePoint or .NET code. So we can kind of move these things around, put them in the header tags, and what we used this for was really to target some of our devices. So let's first go and look at some of the code that we used within our SharePoint to target the different things. I'm going to go back into the master pages, find my HTML master page. And let's say here's a good example. So with our design, the design was created for the desktop version. So if we scaled it down, it didn't really fit properly on tablets and mobile devices. So we decided to create these ourselves and perform different edits to our CSS files, or create different CSS files for a new design for a tablet or for a mobile. So our design and layout was not responsive. Was not a responsive design based on time constraints. The design firm was just more than capable of doing it, but just with the task that we had was to get something out, get it done really quickly. So what we did is we put this device channel within our header, And again, took out some of those div tags. And so for our default channel, we are putting in what's our CSS here. Also maybe adding a particular some JavaScript that we need to. Here's targeting our mobile devices, so using a different CSS. And then for our tablet, using another CSS. And then combining in some type of JavaScript to scale things the way that we want to based on our device. So with the use of these different style sheets in the device channel panels, we can create our different looks. Now you can see from here we have the desktop version, the tablet version, and the mobile version. Now SharePoint makes it really nice and convenient now to be able to be testing these within the browser what we can use. What we could do is add question mark device channel and then the name of our channel into the URL to be able to test how these look. So it's not like we have to have all of our multiple devices and tablets and phones to be able to test this, although that would be the preferable way. But if we need to quickly test how our designs are going to be looking and feeling right within SharePoint, right within the browser, we can use this aspect. So if we go into our browser and we go to our page, now, let me get this here. Whoops, looks like I got a wrong page. Let me find out what my page is actually called. And that's another thing with SharePoint is now we can use a lot of these friendly URLs, so somebody isn't necessarily seeing .aspx and then the particular page name. There we go, home. So that might be another one to try and avoid. So device channel equals tablet. So we can see how our design is now going to change. Some of the things moved around a little bit. And then even further with the mobile design. We can also type in our default to get our default view again. So with publishing our design, we've done this. We've put our designs into pages, into SharePoint. We published our files to make sure that they're all available for us to use and to see. Again, the most important steps of the Design Manager are steps 4 and 6. They're creating the master pages and editing the page layouts. We can assign the master pages to different device channels, and we can create different ways to make our page layouts through Design Manager. We can also add our web parts and apps. We saw this from our snippets gallery. We can actually create the web part zones and then put them into our pages. For additional styling on 100years.ba.com is one of the things we wanted to do, as said earlier, is we wanted to hide the ribbon or the sweep bar which is at top of the page from certain users. So we use this permission string here, and this is the different types of editing that can be done within SharePoint or viewing. We wanted people that were not site admins to be able to see the suite bar. And here's some of the styling for it as well. And that is located right here at the top. This is now called the suite bar up here, and then when you go into edited pages, there's the ribbon that comes up beneath it that you can have different options. That's kind of a Microsoft Office standard now. Here's a lot of resources that we found helpful in our research and implementing and learning more about Design Manager. And this is really something that Microsoft has come up with. And I've also taken a branding class through a specialist, and that person didn't really recommend using Design Manager. Thought it was kind of extra fluff for something that's already putting in a lot of extra code into your pages. However, we found that with Design Manager, if you need to implement something really quickly, it works. And we had minimal problems implementing a custom design and putting it into SharePoint and creating our master pages, creating our page layouts to really get a nice looking site up and running very quickly. So hats off to Microsoft for doing that, because previously the branding experience has been always kind of fraught with a lot of headaches and a lot of noodling around trying to find how Microsoft is doing things, but this really simplifies the process. So with our design, this was a very quick and easy way to get up a design, and as you noticed, we really only have this one page that we've been working with, and that was incorporated with our master page, and then using our one-page layout to create this design, this look, and this feel. It did provide some interactivity where we were able to incorporate some videos into our design. We also added our Yammer feed here, which is being brought in through some a Yammer code. So we had our own particular Yammer group that's located here. We have some clicks to other types of Yammer notes. We have a particular type of image gallery that we wanted to implement. We could showcase some of our employees. But we found that after the launch of this, it was very successful, got a lot of people interested, but what else could we do with it? How could we make, one, our site better, and also how can we use and utilize Design Manager more than we had with our first phase? So what we embarked on was our phase 2 approach. Now what we asked our design firm to do was to create a new responsive design site with the capabilities of having multiple subpages, being a full site that our employee could go to, learn more about the firm again, and see more pictures and galleries and videos that we have and we want to be posting on our site. So with phase 2, our design firm came up with this new design. It had a lot of things that we're looking to, and we had on the first site. We had our Yammer feed here on the right. We have a new menu, pop up and show different aspects and subpages of our site. Really provide a big hero image and a centenary gallery that we'll go to, and we can view different types of images and videos on the site, and provide some of the same things we had on the last site as well. So with this design, And I'll go to one of our subpages. Is we came up with different page layouts to use so that we can have different things going on, different types of designs, different types of looks. And we did all of this again through SharePoint Design Manager. Now, we did not use the device channels on here because our design firm incorporated the use of responsive design. Using a grid type of system, they provided the HTML code that and JavaScript and CSS that would scale this site and provide us with something that we didn't have to reinvent things, such as the CSS. We could just go in and it would be adjustable to the screen. So as we can see, as it gets smaller, it scales. The menus have different aspects to it. So providing all of our content within a responsive design. Now with this, we use the same approach. We came into Design Manager. We had our design files. We uploaded our design files, our CSS, our JavaScript, our HTML. We selected and created the new phase and master page and page layouts. So if we take a preview of the master page, we took the same approach. We kind of have the header, the footer. The menu, we actually incorporated a snippet using the site navigation, and we targeted the metadata tagging system that SharePoint has in order to incorporate our menu structure. So this is all driven by metadata tags, and when a site content owner wants to add a new page, it'll automatically be drawn into the menu. So we're not going into the HTML master page to modify the menu or doing anything to static HTML content. If we go into the page layouts, we can see that we have multiple page layouts, and this is all these ones for phase 2. We have different subpages, different article pages, different gallery pages. All these are particular for this phase of the approach, so we can have different page layouts all attached to that master page. And with this approach, we really brought in a lot of the SharePoint functionality of using site content types, media gallery sets, and the search functionality so that we can show off some of the different aspects of tagging systems and also showing the different videos and content that we have online. This is using a bootstrap approach, Twitter Bootstrap, some of this media gallery, and I believe Fancy Box for the pop-up windows here. We can search by different types of tags. And in our system here, if we have a particular videos, it'll also play in our mobile lookup. So some of these richer features of SharePoint weren't necessarily made in Design Manager, but we can incorporate a design into Design Manager, incorporate the features of SharePoint into our design without really reinventing the wheel or going into our master pages and customizing a lot of things. And as an approach before, this would have been a real long-term effort that would have taken a team to put this together. And this was really drawn together by two developers and incorporating all of this together into this site. And we can go on from here. We could create different master pages, different page layouts, all attaching, all within Design Manager. And this was, again, a short timeline where we really need to get this up, make it look good, make it work. Everything here seems to work just fine in SharePoint using that external design. Overall, we've been very happy with the Design Manager aspect. Even the device channels really proved effective when we couldn't have a responsive design based on our timeline. Thank you very much for taking your time and listening to my presentation on branding SharePoint 2013 with Device Design Manager and device channels. I hope you've learned something about how you can really take a customized external design and import it into SharePoint and really make it effective for your organization. If you'd like to contact me, I've listed some information here. My email address at BoozeAllenHamilton is allmeter_Brian@ba.com. My Twitter handle is @BrianAllmeter. LinkedIn address is linkedin.com/in/ballmeter. You can also visit BoozeAllen.com and learn more about our organization and our 100 years of character. Learn different stories about our founding and some of the great clients that we've served over the years. Thank you very much again.